Court documents paint a disturbing picture of a Norfolk mother who wanted out of a gang and what happened when she tried to get away. In April of 2020, the victim joined a gang called the Rollin' 20s Outlaw Bloods. According to paperwork filed last week in Norfolk Circuit Court, part of the initiation involved frequent beatings from female gang members. On April 23, 2020, the victim went to a gang member's house with her 2-year-old son, and while there, gang members beat her.
These are the faces of the men and women shot and over a violent 18 days last December. Tonight, these are the men facing charges in their deaths. Anthony Foy, Nathaniel Mitchell, Antonio Simmons, and Alvon Davis. 33 charges in all.
The nickname Messiah is the critical piece of information that helped Hampton police make an arrest in a shooting turn. According to the Norfolk Sheriff's Department, the nickname Messiah belongs to Dante Hampton, who they say is a known documented gang member.
Norfolk prosecutors say 3 known gang members are going to prison for several crimes, including gun violations.
All 3 men who have now been arrested and charged are well-known gang members. Now, 26-year-old Patrick Barnes, Deshaun Bryant, and Gary Drew have been arrested.
Siobhan Pierce is wanted for second-degree in the April 8th shooting death of 18-year-old Antonio Wilson on East Virginia Beach Boulevard in Norfolk.
Norfolk, Virginia is one of the oldest port cities on the East Coast, built on shipyards, Navy influence, and neighborhoods that have long been shaped by migration, working class hustle, and the pulse of the Chesapeake Bay. It's also a city with real cultural weight. The wider 757 has produced icons like Pharrell Williams and Timbaland, and Norfolk sits at the center of that same Tidewater energy music, military, grit, and ambition all colliding in one place. But behind the waterfront and the history is another Norfolk that rarely gets framed with context. Street crews, gang sets, federal indictments, and violent cases that spill from apartment hangouts to corner stores to major highways. This documentary follows that side of the city through a lineup of real arrests and prosecutions, from the Rolling 20s Bloods linked disciplined violence, to Spazz gang gun cases, to the G-Shine Bloods trafficking, to multiple Norfolk deletions, and even a Hampton Roads RICO spree that brought life sentences.
These are the faces of the men and women shot and over a violent 18 days last December. Tonight, these are the men facing charges in their deaths. Anthony Foy, Nathaniel Mitchell, Antonio Simmons, and Alvon Davis. 33 charges in all, including an attempted racketeering, assault, and drug charges. Federal authorities say they are members of the 9 Trey Gangsters, affiliated with the United Blood Nation. The indictment says a conflict between 2 local sets of the gang is what fueled the crime spree. December 10th, Al Tariq Tynes died, but wasn't found until weeks later in a ditch near Grand Isle Drive and Rotunda Avenue in Portsmouth. December 15th, Vandalay Mercer shot in the torso, later died in Portsmouth after a shooting near Deep Creek Boulevard and Graham Street. December 20th, Linda Lassiter and Wayne Davis, a couple, in their car on Lauren Crescent in Portsmouth. December 21st, Jamisha Roberts found lying dead on Robin Hood Road in Norfolk. 6 days later, the shooting stopped when officers arrested Foy and Mitchell following an armed robbery at the Shell gas station on Portsmouth Boulevard. The indictment alleges Foy and Mitchell committed 10 shootings together last December. Simmons, the gang leader, allegedly participated in the planning of at least 3 shootings. Davis is accused of acting as a driver in multiple shootings and disposing of a body. Foy and Mitchell were previously convicted and sentenced for their role in that Shell gas station robbery, where court papers say they made away with just $150. The 9 Trey Gangsters primarily operate in Portsmouth, Chesapeake, and Norfolk.
Federal prosecutors in Virginia brought a sweeping racketeering case against 4 men from the Hampton Roads area, accusing them of orchestrating a violent month-long spree that included 5 deletions and multiple attempted deletions during December 2015. The defendants named in the case were Antonio Simmons, Murdoch of Norfolk, Anthony D. Foy, Bull or Ace of Portsmouth, Nathaniel T. Mitchell, Savage of Portsmouth, and Alvon Davis, LB of Portsmouth. According to federal allegations, the men were connected to the 9 Trey Gangsters, a blood set described as affiliated with the United Blood Nation. Prosecutors said the violence was fueled in part by conflict between local 9 Trey groups, and that Simmons led one faction that included Foy, Mitchell, and Davis. In the government's theory, internal disputes, retaliation, and the desire to build status drove a rapid escalation into repeated shootings across the region. The prosecution tied the case to a series of deletions and attempted deletions that unfolded within days of each other. Prosecutors alleged that Alteric Tynes met his demise on December 10, 2015, followed by the demise of Vandalit Mercer on December 15, 2015, along with an attempted deletion that same day. The violence continued on December 20th, when prosecutors said Wayne Davis and Linda Lassiter met their demise, with additional attempted deletion victims connected to the same broader streak. Authorities also alleged that Jamisha Roberts, a 25-year-old mother, met her demise on December 21st in Norfolk. Prosecutors emphasized that many of the victims were not gang members, and they argued the shootings were meant to strengthen the gang's reputation through fear and intimidation. Federal filings assigned different roles to each defendant. Prosecutors alleged Foy and Mitchell were the primary shooters tied to many of the attacks, while Simmons was described as a leader who helped plan multiple shootings and exercised influence over the crew. Davis was portrayed as a key facilitator, accused of assisting the shooters by acting as a driver during certain incidents and helping cover up the crimes, including assisting in disposing of at least one body. Investigators said the streak of shootings stopped after key arrests, and authorities claimed those arrests helped connect the defendants to the broader pattern of violence. The defendants ultimately received very heavy federal sentences. Antonio Simmons was sentenced to multiple life terms plus decades in prison, reflecting prosecutors' portrayal of him as a leader in the enterprise. Nathaniel Mitchell was sentenced to multiple life sentences plus additional years, while Anthony Foy received a life sentence tied to multiple deletions connected to the racketeering case. Ovon Davis received a 45-year federal sentence. After the
Newly filed court documents paint a disturbing picture of a Norfolk mother who wanted out of a gang and what happened when she tried to get away. In April of 2020, the victim joined a gang called the Rollin' 20s Outlaw Bloods. According to paperwork filed last week in Norfolk Circuit Court, part of the initiation involved frequent beatings from female gang members. On April 23, 2020, the victim went to a gang member's house with her 2-year-old son, and while there, gang members beat her. At that point, the paperwork says she told the group's leader that she wanted to get out of the gang. Documents say the highest-ranking female insisted to kill her because she knew too much about the gang. Documents reveal those gang members strangled her, tried to snap her neck, stabbed her multiple times, and even poured bleach down her throat. After that, paperwork says 2 gang members put her in her car, drove several blocks away, and shot her multiple times. 1 bullet went through her right eye and exited her right ear. The 2 men then left her in the front seat. They also drove the victim's son to a West Ghent neighborhood, pushed the toddler out of the car, and drove off. Court documents say a trash truck driver found the little boy in the rain hours later. The victim is alive after multiple surgeries, but will battle lifelong medical and emotional trauma, according to the documents. The Norfolk Commonwealth's Attorney's Office spokeswoman says 10 gang members face several charges, including abduction and aggravated assault.
10 gang members involved in the April 2020 attack and maiming of a 21-year-old Norfolk mother who wanted to leave the gang are heading to prison, but the woman lost her right eye and hearing in her right ear, where the bullet went through.
But now 3 years later, the last of her offenders was sentenced to prison. And that's 34-year-old Brandon Winnigan, who was sentenced to life in prison yesterday. He was charged with a handful of crimes, including aggravated malicious wounding, child neglect, and doing a criminal act for a gang. Back in 2020, Winnigan and 9 others stabbed, beat, and forced a 21-year-old woman to drink bleach before shooting her and leaving her in a car to die. Authorities say Winnigan was the group leader who authorized the attack. The woman was trying to get out of being initiated in the gang. The woman had her 2-year-old son with her, and the members pushed her son out of a car, but he was found unharmed.
Prosecutors say the April 24, 2020 shooting on the 500 block of Glendale Avenue was the end of an hours-long gang-related discipline attack tied to a local set connected to the Rollin' 20s Outlaw Bloods. They alleged the 21-year-old victim had recently been recruited and was assaulted at an apartment used as a gang hangout on the night of April 23rd. When she said she wanted to leave, prosecutors claimed the group escalated, arguing she knew too much, damaging her phone, and preventing her from leaving before transporting her in her own vehicle. Police say officers later found the victim inside a vehicle suffering life-threatening gunshot injuries. She was rushed to the hospital and was expected to survive. Prosecutors also said her young child was separated during the ordeal and later found safe. Investigators described the case as a mob-style attack, and on June 11, 2020, Norfolk police announced 10 arrests with charges that included malicious wounding, abduction, mob assault, conspiracy, and firearm offenses, along with gang-related counts involving participation or recruitment. In published outcomes, Brandon Saso Winnigan received the harshest punishment at life plus 38 years. Several others received long sentences with substantial time suspended, including Tavarius Flash Mitchell, 34 active, Deandra Killa Watkins, 36 active, and Taporsha Lawless Hodges, 21 active, while the remaining defendants received shorter active terms ranging roughly from about 4 to 7 years depending on their role and plea results.
The Security Threat Unit gathers information on criminals and documented gang members inside the Norfolk City Jail. The sheriff says this unit played a critical role in the capture of Dante Hampton because they knew his street name, which they say tied him to a Hampton.
My 35 years of law enforcement, I only heard that name one time on one subject.
The nickname Messiah is the critical piece of information that helped Hampton police make an arrest in a shooting turned homicide.
We knew instantly, but you hear a lot of different nicknames that are generic. Messiah was not one of them. Messiah was distinctive.
According to the Norfolk Sheriff's Department, the nickname Messiah belongs to Dante Hampton, who they say is a known documented gang member. The Hampton Police Department says they were looking for Messiah for his alleged role in last month's deadly shooting at Abington Apartments. According to Norfolk Sheriff Joe Barron, deputies within the Security Threat Unit inside the jail knew the name because Hampton had previously served time there.
Deputies, they deal with inmates every single day, so guess what they get to know? They get to know them by their names, they get to know them by their nicknames, they know what they look like because they see them every single day.
Thanks to the Norfolk Sheriff's Department's intel, Hampton police were able to find Dante Hampton and make an arrest in this case.
After the March 25th triple shooting in Hampton, Virginia, investigators said they had intelligence that a gang member known only as Messiah was involved, but they didn't know his real name or where he was. Norfolk investigators then leaned on the Norfolk Sheriff's Office Security Threat Unit inside the Norfolk City Jail, which tracks gang intelligence. The STU identified Messiah as Don DeMille Hampton, and the marshals were able to locate and arrest him. Police and court reporting tied the case to a deadly incident that left 30-year-old Anthony Carell Floyd Jr. dead. A preliminary investigation described Hampton getting into an argument inside a home and calling Floyd and Willie Derez Milligan Jr. to come over. Investigators said Floyd and Milligan arrived armed. Gunfire erupted with another man inside the home, and all three were hit, with Floyd later pronounced dead while the others survived with non-life-threatening injuries. In the early stage, Hampton was charged with a stack of offenses. The Norfolk Sheriff's STU described Messiah as a high-ranking gangster disciple. He was sentenced to 38 years, with 28 years suspended, meaning 10 years active on that sentence. Separate from the Hampton triple shooting case, Hampton also faced a federal prosecution connected to drug trafficking and firearms in the Hampton Roads area. In that case, the attorney's office described him as a member of the Gangster Disciples and said he led a large-scale meth and Mary distribution operation. He ultimately received a 35-year federal sentence, announced April 1, 2025.
We also have more breaking news this midday. Norfolk prosecutors say 3 known gang members are going to prison for several crimes, including gun violations. Tyon Spain, Nazim Green, and Jamal Wilson pleaded guilty in their cases. Investigators say their crimes include felony eluding and possession of stolen firearms. Prosecutors say they are all members of the Spazz gang.
Norfolk prosecutors said 3 documented gang members, Tyon Ephraim Spain, Nasim Rakim Green, and Jamal Jeremiah Wilson were convicted and sentenced after two separate incidents in late May and early June 2024 involving firearms and ammunition. In the first incident on May 31, 2024, police said they observed Spain and Green acting suspiciously. Prosecutors said officers later found a loaded handgun and ammunition in nearby bushes after the men fled. Both defendants ultimately pleaded guilty to being felons in possession of ammunition. The second incident happened on June 6, 2024, when police attempted to stop a vehicle they suspected was connected to an armed robbery report earlier that day. Prosecutors said Green fled, leading police on a dangerous chase that ended in a crash, and both Green and Wilson ran from the scene. Investigators said searches connected to the chase led to additional firearms-related evidence, including a stolen firearm connected to Wilson's case. Prosecutors noted robbery-related charges were not pursued because witnesses did not cooperate. For the sentences, prosecutors said Spain received 1 year and 1 month in prison, Green received 5 years, and Wilson received 1 year with 4 years suspended after pleading guilty to felony possession of a stolen firearm. The court also imposed conditions restricting gang association as part of the outcomes.
Police say that all 3 men who have now been arrested and charged are well-known gang members. Now, 26-year-old Patrick Barnes, Deshaun Bryant, and Gary Drew have been arrested in the connection of the deadly shooting that happened early Saturday morning on Military Highway. Again, all 3 men are charged with second-degree murder, mob assault, and abduction. Police say the victim, 34-year-old Michael McGregor, died Saturday morning before he could be taken to the hospital. Now, all 3 suspects are being held at the Norfolk City Jail without bond.
Norfolk police say Michael M.C. Greger was fatally shot early March 30, 2019, in the 3,500 block of North Military Highway. 3 suspects, Gary Drew, Deshaun Bryant, and Patrick Barnes, were charged with major offenses including second-degree deletion, abduction, mob assault, conspiracy, and firearm charges. Detectives said the suspects were known gang members and believed the demise was gang-related, though no specific gang name was consistently released. Court summaries described the shooting as the end of a violent incident where another man was assaulted and forced at gunpoint toward a rear parking area. MC Greger reportedly chased after them. Gunfire erupted, and he collapsed after being shot. In court, Drew was convicted of abduction, conspiracy, and a firearm offense, but acquitted of the demise with a jury recommending about 5 years and 6 months. Barnes was convicted of second-degree deletion, abduction, and 2 firearm counts, and those convictions were upheld on appeal.
Police have identified the man who died in a weekend shooting as 18-year-old Antonio Wilson. It happened around 3:30 Saturday afternoon on East Virginia Beach Boulevard. When police arrived, they found Wilson with a gunshot wound. He was taken to the hospital where he died from his injuries.
Siobhan Pierce is wanted for second-degree in the April 8th shooting death of 18-year-old Antonio Wilson on East Virginia Beach Boulevard in Norfolk. Pierce has Gotti Gang tattooed across his neck. Investigators believe that he is still hiding out in the area. Pierce is considered armed and dangerous.
On April 8, 2023, 18-year-old Antonio Wilson was shot and met his demise outside the Shop and Go at 711 East Virginia Beach Boulevard in Norfolk. Prosecutors said the violence started as an attempted robbery in effort to take Wilson's gun and ended with him being shot just outside the store. According to court summaries, 7 Orinola Pierce Jr., Ty John Lavon Brooks, and Dashawn Jamil Robinson arrived together and were caught on surveillance inside. Wilson came in shortly after and even exchanged a friendly greeting with Brooks before buying items, but prosecutors said the tone shifted fast. They alleged the 3 moved outside, waited near the corner, and rushed Wilson as soon as he exited. Prosecutors said Brooks pointed a gun at Wilson and reached toward his waistband, while Pierce and Robinson also drew firearms. When Wilson reached toward his own waistband, shots were fired, Wilson went down, and prosecutors alleged Pierce grabbed Wilson's firearm as they fled, supporting the robbery motive. Investigators used surveillance and forensic evidence, including DNA linking Robinson to recovered items, to build the case. Arrests followed over the next few months. Brooks was captured out of state, Pierce was arrested after a pursuit, and Robinson was arrested later in 2023. In the end, Pierce was convicted at trial, while Brooks and Robinson pleaded guilty to second-degree deletion, with Pierce receiving the longest sentence. Federal Torian Marquise Namo, also known as Herkio Streets, was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison for running a drug operation out of a home near East Little Creek Road and Tidewater Drive in Norfolk, Virginia. The sentence was imposed on May 9, 2023 by U.S. District Judge Elizabeth W. Haynes, with 5 years of supervised release to follow. Federal prosecutors said Namo was convicted of possession with intent to distribute meth and possessing a firearm in furtherance of drug trafficking, tied to a conspiracy they said ran from May 2021 through April 2022. The case centered on a search warrant served on April 29, 2022 at his Orchid Avenue residence, where prosecutors said Namo tried to flee, but was caught after a short-foot chase. Inside the home, investigators reported finding drugs, about $60,000 in cash, scales and packaging materials, 2 firearms with ammunition, and sheets listing unpaid drug debts. Prosecutors also said Namo had security cameras in the house, and that phone and social media evidence showed trafficking activity and ties to other gang members. They described him as a high-ranking member of the G Shine Bloods, a subset of the United Blood Nation. Norfolk police arrest gang member wanted for murder. In early March, a shooting in Norfolk, Virginia left Patrick Cochran of Suffolk dead. Police said Cochran was found shot inside a car parked on East Little Creek Road and later died at the hospital. Investigators determined the shooting actually happened in the 7900 block of Orchid Avenue, and the vehicle was later moved to East Little Creek Road. Police named Thomas Nesmith as a wanted suspect and said he faced charges including second-degree deletion. Before his arrest, authorities believed he might have fled to Brooklyn, New York, and the U.S. Marshals identified him as a known Crips member. Investigators said the case involved multiple defendants. Jeremy Harris and Becca Banto were arrested not long after the shooting and also charged with second-degree deletion. Nesmith was later arrested and held in the Norfolk City Jail without bond as the case moved forward in court. Altogether, these cases show how Norfolk's gang landscape isn't one single story, it's a network of overlapping sets, drug pipelines, and retaliatory decisions that turn everyday locations into crime scenes. A Glendale Avenue car, a shop-and-go sidewalk, a military highway parking area, an Orchid Avenue block, and stash houses near busy intersections. The courts laid out the pattern in plain numbers: decades in prison, life sentences, and federal time that effectively ends whole chapters of street activity, yet the human cost is still the loudest part. Victims caught in the crossfire, families left with grief, and communities forced to live around cycles of fear. If Norfolk's history is about power and movement through its port, these cases are the darker reflection of that same theme: how violence and influence move too, and how the law eventually moves back just as hard.